It's NFL Week 16, and it's a full slate of games going down this holiday weekend with 2 games on Saturday, 10 on Sunday, and 3 more on Christmas Day on Monday. Now, I've created my NFL picks from 8 of these games and come up with 2 of my best NFL parlays for this weekend. Last week, these picks went 1-1, leaving us at 16-13 on the season. So let's get started with parlay number 1. This one is pretty straightforward. There's 3 huge favorites in Week 16 this week. I'm basically going to ask all 3 to win the game, plus adding in 1 more prop from the Monday Night Football game to up the odds just a little bit. So let's get started. The first game is on Saturday. Bills and the Chargers. Now, no 2 teams have looked worse or better than these 2 in the past week. The Chargers got completely boat raced by Las Vegas last Thursday. The final score, it looks bad enough at 63-21, but those 21 points were meaningless as they came after the game was well out of hand as the Chargers were down 49-0. The 63 points allowed was the most the Chargers have ever given up in their team history. It was also the most points the Raiders have ever scored in their team history. Now, Brandon Staley's time as head coach, he was already probably running out of time before this game, as they'd already put up 7, 6, and then 10 points in their previous games. And this loss did him in. He and the GM lost their jobs. So it's now losses in 5 of 6 for the Chargers. It's a stretch that's seen them score an average of just 12.8 points per game in their last 5. The Chargers are also one of the worst ATS teams this year, being just 5-9, a mark that's only better than 4 other teams. They're 1-5 ATS in their past 6 as well. Now, can an interim coach, Jeff Smith, no Justin Herbert, and no Keenan Allen stop a suddenly surging Bills team? I don't think so. This is a Bills team that just beat the Chiefs 20-17, the Cowboys 31-10 as well last week. Now, Josh Allen is 3rd in touchdown passes, but he was barely even needed last week in that win as James Cook ran all over the Cowboys for 179 yards. Now, Aiden O'Connell of the Raiders, he just threw for 4 touchdowns against this Chargers defense last week. And it's a Chargers defense that's ranked 30th against the pass, gives up the 3rd most passing yards, getting up the 3rd most passing yards per game, the 3rd most touchdowns to wide receivers, and the 4th most yards to tight ends. This is a game that looks like Josh Allen and his receivers should be able to have a big day against. Now, after a streak that saw the Bills go 0-6 ATS, they're now 3-1 ATS in their past 4. The Bills can still win their division, and they can still miss the playoffs, so there's no time to let up right now. This is the time to keep pushing forward. I think the Bills cruise to victory, but just in case the Chargers do somehow get that new coach bump, let's tease down the Bills to -2.5 from that -12.5 that they're favored at right now. And let's move over into Christmas Day now, and it's over to Christmas Day where it's game 1 of 3, the Raiders and the Chiefs. Now, these teams just played on November 26th. After falling behind 14-0 in Las Vegas, the Chiefs woke up and they scored 31 of the next 34 points to go on to win 31-17. But it was 2 losses following that win versus the Packers and the Bills before a less than convincing 27-17 win over the Patriots last week, as that game was close at halftime. But KC has won 6 straight in this divisional rivalry, as well as 11 of 12 and 16 of 18. Patrick Mahomes is 10-1 straight up and 7-4 ATS versus the Raiders, and KC has scored 28 or more points in every game versus the Raiders in that stretch. The Raiders steamroll the Chargers team that had hacked it in on the season last week, like we just talked about in the last game, 63-21. But this is the same team that just got shut out 3-0 to Minnesota the week prior. Mahomes' ATS record when favored by 7 or more points may not be a great one at 21-26-2, but he is 10-1 straight up versus the Raiders in the past 11. Once again, don't always trust the Chiefs to win as double digits here, but if we tease them down to -2.5, they should be able to win by at least a field goal and cover all those angles that we just talked about. So let's go KC -2.5. Game number 2 on Christmas Day is the Giants and the Eagles. Now, the Giants got their dead cat bounce with the insertion of Tommy DeVito at quarterback, and he and his agent got their moment in the spotlight with 3 straight wins over the Commanders, the Patriots, and the Packers in prime time as well. Now, that was going to be a hard act to follow, and it did prove to be the case as they went to New Orleans and they lost big time, 24-6 last week. Now, the Eagles are not exactly in great shape themselves. They've suffered 3 straight losses, including a Monday Night Football 20-17 road loss in Seattle to Drew Lock of all quarterbacks. The Eagles have been poor defending the pass, but that shouldn't be much of a problem here against the Giants and DeVito. But Philly should also be able to take advantage of the Giants' poor run defending. The Giants are 29th ranked against the run defense. And they've allowed opposing running backs to combine for 90, 83, 144, 139, 132, and 104 yards on the ground in the past 6 games. And the 1,573 total rushing yards allowed by the Giants is 30th in the league. Now, Jalen Hurts was dealing with an illness last week. He should be recovered in time for this week and be feeling better. And the Eagles will come home to where they are 5-1 this season. They're also 4-0 and 16-3 straight up versus the Giants going back all the way into 2014. So there is a history of dominance of the Eagles over the Giants. Now, their last game when these teams played was in the playoffs last year, and it was a 38-7 beatdown in Philadelphia. Once again, let's tease the Eagles from double-digit favorites all the way down to just under a field goal at -2.5. And finally, to get this up a little bit more, let's include the last game on the slate, and it's the Monday Night Football game, Ravens and the 49ers. Game 3 on Monday, could be a Super Bowl preview. Now, the Ravens only have 3 losses on the year, none in the past 4 games, and only by 2, 7, and 3 points when they have lost. They average 27.4 points per game, which is 4th, and they have scored over 30 points in 6 of their past 8 games. Now, one of the 3 teams Baltimore is behind in scoring is San Francisco, who averaged 30.4 points per game, which is 3rd. And you can say the same thing about the 49ers when it comes to their scoring prowess of late, in that they've won 6 straight, and they've scored 34, 27, 31, 42, 28, and 45 points while doing so. And they have won their recent games by 31, 13, 18, 23, 12, and 16 points in those games. So they are crushing teams by double digits lately. But the Ravens have spent 90% of this season either tied or leading, and they've incredibly led in the final 2 minutes of every single game this season. I could see with these 2 teams probably teasing either team could be a good bet. The Ravens up into double digits as a double-digit underdog, or turning the 49ers into a small home underdog. If you use, say, a 10-point teaser, I could see both of those options working out. I can also see points in some way, shape, or form in this game. Now, the Jaguars moved the ball up and down the field against the Ravens, no problem last week, but they missed field goals and just kept screwing up, but they very easily should have had some more points, and then they lost Trevor Lawrence to concussion. San Fran is still undefeated with Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, and Deebo Samuel in the lineup, and all 3 of those guys will be in the lineup on Monday. Meanwhile, the Cardinals scored 29 points, though, on the 49ers last week, and Kyler Murray rushed for 49 yards. So Lamar Jackson certainly brings a similar skill set to the table and could also get some good rushing yards against the 49ers. Jackson has excelled as an underdog as well, 11-2 ATS as an underdog, while Baltimore overall is 24-1 ATS as a dog in their past 25 games. They're also 15-2 ATS as a dog in their past 17. And Lamar has just owned the entire NFC conference, being 19-1 straight up. And then you can consider that underdogs have won the last 9 straight games on Monday Night Football. So there are a few trends that could go towards both teams there. I think there's many ways to bet this game. I think you could certainly get better odds, at least going 2 touchdowns from both teams. But I like to play this safe. I'm just going both teams to score 10 points. So if I go Buffalo, KC, and Philly all tease down to -2.5, which is essentially a 10-point teaser on those teams, more or less. I'm using the alternate spreads. And then throwing in Baltimore, San Fran, both to score 10 or more. I have that at -122. Like I said, you could possibly go both teams to score 2 touchdowns in that game, or maybe go, just to get some little bit better odds if that's what you wanted. I'll stick with -122 odds there. Parlay number 2 will be 4 more games, and this will use a few different props and teasers in this one. And it's going to go back. Let's go back to Saturday. And it's the first game on this weekend card. It's the Bengals and the Steelers. Now, since the defeat to Pittsburgh in Jake Browning's first start, 16-10, it's been 3 straight wins for Browning and the Bengals. First, it was 34-31 over Jacksonville, then 34-14 over Indy, and then last week's 27-24 overtime win against Minnesota. Now, Browning's threw for 324 yards, meaning he's now thrown for 954 yards and 5 touchdowns in the last 3 wins with the Bengals. It's been the complete opposite story for Pittsburgh since that win over Cincy. They've lost 24-10 to Arizona, 21-18 to New England, who were both 2-win teams at the time, and then 30-13 to Indy last week. They've gone through Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, and now they're moving on to Mason Rudolph. Rudolph has played in 18 games in his career, throwing for 2,369 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. Now, having not featured at all in any games last season, he's only played in 3 games over the past 3 years after making a brief appearance near the end of the game last week. Now, Steelers wins this season, of which there's been 7. They have won by 4, 5, 7, 7, 4, 4, and 6 points, so all very close games. The Bengals are 8-6, and when they've lost their games, it's been by 21, 3, 24, 3, 14, and 6 points. Now, those 20-point losses were way back at the start of the year, and the 14-point loss was in November, but that was the game that Burrow got knocked out of and gave way to Browning. So this is generally a spot where Tomlin excels as a betting underdog. He's 55, 31-3 in his career as a dog, and he's even better, 25, 5-1 ATS as a home division dog. However, recently, Pittsburgh is 0-3 ATS in their past 3 and 1-4 in their past 5. Listen, Pickett and Trubisky are not exactly great quarterbacks, and Mason Rudolph couldn't beat out either of them in the offseason or during this season as Pittsburgh has struggled to move the ball all year. He's been glued to the bench. It's only out of necessity now where they're turning to him as a last-ditch result. I don't see him being the better quarterback option over Browning. I trust Browning a little bit more here. I would take Cincinnati as a short road favorite at -2.5 if I was going to do this by itself in a straight bet, but I like to do big teasers and parlays here. Let's go Cincinnati all the way to a 10.5 point underdog. They don't lose by a lot of points often. Pittsburgh has never won by that much. So even if Pittsburgh does, win this game, as it's a role where they usually excel in as a home underdog, let's just play it safe. Cincinnati plus 10.5. Next up, it's the Lions and the Vikings in another divisional rivalry. Now, it's the first of 2 meetings within 3 weeks for these NFC North rivals to end the season. They'll play each other again in a couple weeks. Now, Detroit has given up defensively 17, 28, 28, 29, 26, 38, 14, and 38 points in their past 8 games. The Vikings offense had flatlined with 10 and 3 points versus Chicago and Las Vegas. But last week, Nick Mullins got the start, and Minnesota lost 27-24 in overtime against Cincinnati. But Mullins was 26-33 with 303 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and the 424 yards of offense Minnesota put up was the 3rd most they'd put up all season long. Mullins will get the start here again, and they'll hope for a better result. Detroit is looking to clinch their first division title since way back in 1993, but Minnesota's games have all been close this season, so even if they lose, it should be a close game. 13 of their 14 games have been decided by 1 score. So what I'm looking at is just a both teams to score prop here, and it's both teams to score 10 or more points. If you look at both teams to score 10 in Minnesota, it's gone 13-1 this season with only the 3-0 Las Vegas game failing to do so. For Detroit, both teams to score 10 is 11-3. They held the Bucs and the Falcons to 6 points earlier this season, and they got stomped once, 38-6 in Baltimore. Otherwise, it's hit in each of their past 7 games. Now, last season when these teams played, Minnesota won 28-24 at home. Detroit won 34-23 at home. Now, neither team has actually failed to score at least 17 points in any of their past 6 games. So this could be a good game to go both teams to score 2 touchdowns. But to play it safe, just both teams to score 10 is good enough for me. Third bet in this parlay, we'll go to the Jaguars and the Bucs. Now, last week the Bucs won 34-20 in Green Bay, now putting them first in the NFC South. That puts them on a 3-game winning streak as well. Now, when the Bucs lose, it's generally not by a ton of points. They've lost by 7, 13, 2, 6, 3, and then 14 and 14. But those bigger defeats have come against teams like Detroit, Philly, and San Francisco, all some of the better teams in the league. Now, the Jaguars are 8-6 and they lead their division, so they could be considered one of the top teams. But I still think they're just a level below some of those teams that I just mentioned. They also come in as losers of 3 straight games, the Jaguars. They lost 23-7 versus the Ravens last week, and 31-27 and 34-21 versus the Browns and Bengals in the games prior. Now, Jacksonville, they may have the 12th best run defense, but they are very terrible at defending the running backs out of the backfield as receivers. The 94 receptions to running backs is a league high, and the 654 yards they've allowed to running backs as receivers is the 2nd most after the Chargers' 679. So this could be a good spot for Tampa Bay to use running back Rachaad White to exploit that weakness. He'd be a good bet for any prop bets as well. But the biggest news in this game is definitely that would tip this in Tampa Bay's favor is that the Jags starting quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, is still in concussion protocol, and he looks set to miss out by all reports at this time. That means it's C.J. Beathard under center for the Jaguars here. I think Tampa Bay, if I was going to bet this game by itself, they could cover the 2.5 at home. That would look like a good bet. But similar to some of these other games, I'm just going to go Tampa Bay plus 10.5 and hope that if they do lose or Lawrence somehow makes a surprise appearance in the game and starts this, that they just don't lose by a lot. So Tampa Bay plus 10.5. And finally, one of the 2 most exciting games of this weekend, it's the Cowboys and the Dolphins. And the Dallas at home are 7-0, and they have a plus 171 point differential. On the road, they're 3-4, and they have a -4 point differential. It's a wild swing of stats there. These are the two top scoring offenses in the league, with Miami being first, averaging 31.5 points per game, and Dallas second with 30.8 points per game. Now, a win here for either team would buck the season trend for both of these teams, and that's the trend that everybody talks about, and that neither of these teams are very good or basically have never beaten a team with a winning record, and that's why this game could be dubbed the Fraud Bowl. Dallas is 10-4, but only a win over divisional rival Philadelphia came versus a team with a winning record heading into Week 16. Now, the Rams did just win on Thursday Night Football, making them 8-7, and the Cowboys have beaten them. So those are their only teams that they've beaten this season who have a winning record. Otherwise, they beat Seattle, who's 7-7, and all their other wins have come against sub-500 opponents. For Miami, it's even a little bit worse. Miami is 10-4 as well, but they're worst in this trend with only a 70-20 rout of the now 7-7 Broncos coming against a team with a non-losing record. Actually, their last win against a team with a winning record was Week 3 of last season, not even this season. Both need a win here as they try to win their respective divisions, but Miami could just be a little fat and happy after a rout of the Jets last week, 30-0. Well, Dallas just got embarrassed, 31-10 in Buffalo, so they should be focused. They should have had a tough week of practice and should be looking to rebound here, and they'll be getting the full attention. Miami will get their full attention. Plus, Dallas is 8-0 ATS in the past 3 years when allowing 30 or more points the game prior, which is what they did last week. And Miami should be getting back Tyreek Hill, but they have some serious injury concerns to worry about, as at some point this week, every one of their starting offensive linemen has been on the injury report at some point, and right now 4 of them still are, so that will be something worth monitoring as well. Now, the both teams to score 2 touchdown prop that several books offer has not always hit in Dallas games this season, but that's mostly because they've demolished a few really bad teams who couldn't contribute to the scoring. Dallas themselves, though, have scored 2 or more touchdowns 11 times this year. That's a similar story for Miami, who have rolled several weak teams, but they have scored 2 or more touchdowns in all 14 games themselves. I think this is too hard to pick a winner here, so why not just sit back, enjoy, and take the both teams to score over 1.5 touchdown prop. And that's what I will do. So it's Dallas and Miami both to score over 1.5 touchdowns. The Bucs plus 10.5. The Bengals plus 10.5. And Detroit and Minnesota both to score 10 points. That comes in at -127. If you want a little bit better odds, I think you could change maybe Cincy and Tampa to just plus 7.5. But I like to give myself a wide room for error. So that wraps up my NFL Week 16 best bets. Now let me know what your favorite NFL picks are in the comments below. And if you found this video and information helpful, help me out by giving this video a like, subscribe to the channel for more NFL and sports picks all season. And no matter what you're betting this weekend, good luck and have a great holiday weekend.